She looked me in the eye and said, "We've all agreed you're not welcome." I had spent over $15,000 making my sister's wedding possible, and now I wasn't even invited. If you've ever given your all and still been told you're too much, this story is for you. Let me show you how I stopped chasing approval and chose peace instead. I've always been the grounded one, the planner, the voice of reason in a family that ran on feeling more than logic. My name is Anna Monroe. I'm 35 years old, a senior financial advisor at a boutique firm in Boston. And I've spent most of my life trying not to take up too much space while somehow still holding everything together. My mother, Evelyn, is the kind of woman people describe as strong-willed, though what they really mean is controlling. She has opinions, loud ones, on everything from fabric choices to life partners. My younger sister Rachel is her opposite in nearly every way. Where our mother is rigid, Rachel floats. She's a visual artist, a freelancer who lives in a converted studio apartment filled with canvases, paint-splattered clothes, and candles that smell like sandalwood and lavender. She creates soft chaos wherever she goes, and for as long as I can remember, I've been quietly cleaning up after it. That isn't a complaint, not entirely. There's always been a part of me that admired how Rachel moved through the world uninhibited, romantic, free. I was the one who learned how to do our taxes in high school. She was the one who painted birds on her bedroom ceiling. I was the one who stayed home to care for Mom when Dad had surgery. She was the one who flew to Paris on a whim because she felt like she needed the colors there. Our mother doted on her as if that recklessness was proof of something divine. I was simply so practical. Which is another way of saying I could be counted on but rarely celebrated. Rachel's art career has always been more aspiration than income. Over the years, Mom quietly funded her rent, her travel, her materials. I stepped in when tuition bills piled up during her final year at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. She doesn't know that I paid that last installment. I never told her. Not because I wanted credit, but because that's how our family worked. I carried the weight no one acknowledged while others chased dreams without asking how the rent was paid. Then Rachel met David, an art curator, at a gallery show in the South End. He was tall, articulate, the kind of man who wore linen without looking like he tried too hard. They fell fast. I could see why he listened when she spoke about brushstrokes and light, and didn't flinch at the mess she left behind her. He made space for her. I liked him for that. When they got engaged, Rachel called me first. "Anna," she shrieked over the phone, her voice almost breaking with excitement. "He proposed. You have to be my maid of honor. I can't do this without you." For a second, I just stood there in my kitchen, holding a spatula over scrambled eggs that were now burning. I felt tears well up before I even answered. "Of course," I whispered. "Of course I will." And I meant it. Whatever our differences. I'd spent a lifetime walking beside her. From school projects to art exhibitions, heartbreaks to hospital runs, I was the constant. I didn't need a title to show up. But hearing her say the words filled something in me that I hadn't even known was empty. Planning began almost immediately. Pinterest boards, venue ideas, floral concepts and dress silhouettes. It was exhilarating. For once, I felt like I wasn't just the reliable sister, I was part of something beautiful and shared. Every Saturday, we'd meet at cafes and sketch out timelines in spiral notebooks. She doodled in the margins, I budgeted costs and called vendors. Then one Thursday afternoon, Mom sent a group text. "Clayton Hotel is booked for July 15th. I've placed the deposit already." They had a last-minute cancellation, and I seized it. Such good luck, I stared at the message for a long moment. Rachel replied almost instantly. "Wow, that's amazing. Mom, thank you. It caught me off guard. Rachel and I had just spent the weekend touring venues. We'd been leaning toward a garden ceremony at the Larchwood estate, more intimate, less sterile. Clayton Hotel was beautiful. Yes, but also expensive and commercial. Not at all Rachel. I texted Rachel privately. "Did you know about this already?" She responded. "Not really. But Mom was excited. And it is a good place. Maybe it's easier this way. Easier for whom I didn't reply right away." I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that maybe Mom was just being efficient, that this was still Rachel's wedding, and I'd find my place in it. But something small and sharp lodged itself inside me that day, an unease I couldn't name. It wasn't just about the hotel. It was about being bypassed. Again. About watching the story change mid-sentence, and realizing I was the only one who noticed the rewrite. I smiled through it. Though, like always, because that's what you do when you're the practical sister in a family full of dreamers. You hold the scaffolding in place even when no one looks up to see who's holding it. I don't remember when the shift began. It wasn't a single moment. More like the slow loosening of a knot you didn't realize was holding everything together. One day I was texting Rachel about bridesmaid dress colors, and the next I was no longer in the loop at all. It started subtly. A few decisions made without my input. A new vendor here, a florist there, our once busy group chat, the one where we'd shared cake-tasting photos, and silly Pinterest fails, went oddly silent. I assumed it had just quieted down. But then one afternoon, I saw a notification pop up at Megan Chase tagged you in a photo. I opened Instagram. There they were. Rachel, Mom, and Megan inside a softly lit bridal boutique, champagne flutes in hand, smiling like everything was exactly as it should be. My mother was holding the train of a gown, Megan adjusting a sash. The caption read, "She found the dress, couldn't have picked a better crew to help." Say yes, bridal bliss. I froze. My thumb hovered over the image, my heart dropping before my brain could catch up. The boutique's name, White Fig Bridal, was familiar. Rachel and I had talked about going there. It was our someday spot since college when we used to joke about veil lengths and aisle songs over boxed wine in my dorm room. We were supposed to go together. I texted her immediately. "Hey, did you already go dress shopping?" A pause. Then, yeah, it kinda happened fast. Mom booked an appointment and it turned into the real thing. You didn't want to tell me I asked. Another pause. Then, it was last minute. Megan was free. I figured I'd send pics. I didn't reply. Because what could I say that wouldn't sound petty or insecure? She was the bride. She had every right to choose her moment, her people, but that didn't stop it from hurting like hell. Later that week, I asked her face to face this time. We were sitting on a bench outside a cafe, 2 cappuccinos between us, untouched. I said it as gently as I could. Did something change between us? Rachel didn't meet my eyes. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and stared at her nails. "No, I've been really busy. Mom's taken over most of the planning." I waited. Nothing else came. It's hard to describe the feeling of being edited out of a narrative you helped build. I wasn't asking to control anything. I didn't need to pick centerpieces or decide the first dance. I just wanted to be included, not because I needed to matter, but because I thought I already did. But instead of confronting anyone, I did what I've always done. I contributed quietly. I paid the deposit for the photographer Rachel had wanted since college, $2,500 out of pocket. Mom thought he was too modern, but Rachel's eyes had lit up when she talked about his work. I didn't mention it to anyone, just transferred the funds and forwarded the confirmation. I ordered customized welcome baskets for the out-of-town guests' artisan chocolates, mini candles, a handwritten note from the bride and groom I drafted myself after rereading their engagement announcement for tone. And then there was the honeymoon. It was supposed to be a surprise. Rachel had always talked about Bali, the colors, the light, the stillness. I found a private villa near Uluwatu with an infinity pool that faced the ocean. I booked first-class flights, a private driver, and even arranged a sunset sailing trip with a local chef on board. It cost me $8,600. Every dollar felt like a love letter. I told myself that once the wedding was over, this awkward distance between us would dissolve. That we'd look back on this chaotic season and laugh about Mom's bridezilla tendencies over wine in Rachel's new apartment. But part of me already knew something had shifted that might not shift back. What haunted me wasn't just being left out, it was how easily it seemed to happen. No questions, no hesitation, just a quiet replacement of roles. Like I was a placeholder someone finally realized they didn't need. And still I stayed silent. Because when you've spent your whole life proving your worth in the shadows, it becomes second nature to wait for someone else to turn on the light. The text from Rachel was short, almost too casual. "Hey, can you come by Mom and Dad's on Thursday evening around 7? I think we need to talk." There was no context, no warmth, no clue what I was walking into. Still, I said yes. Because somewhere deep down, I thought this might be the moment. The one where she'd notice how far we'd drifted and try to close the gap. The one where she'd tell me she missed me, where we'd remember who we were before all this noise. Thursday came. I drove through the quiet streets of our childhood neighborhood, past the oak tree where we'd built a swing, past the mailbox Rachel had painted with sunflowers when she was 13. I parked in the same spot I had parked 100 times before. But that night, everything felt off. The porch light was on. The door creaked open before I could knock. Mom stood there in her favorite silk blouse, the one she wore when company came over or when she wanted to look polished but intimidating. "We're in the living room," she said without a hello, and turned before I could respond. I stepped inside. Dad was seated in his usual armchair, eyes fixed on the floor. Megan, somehow already perched on the edge of the love seat, offered me a smile that didn't touch her eyes. Rachel sat beside her, shoulders tense, hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't look up. No one offered me a seat. I stayed standing. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Mom stepped forward, arms crossed, her expression pinched with what she probably thought was compassion. "There's something we need to talk about. As a family." I glanced at Rachel, then back to Mom. Rachel said she wanted to talk. I didn't realize this was everyone. Mom gave a half smile. "We've all talked. A lot. Actually. And we've come to a difficult decision." My stomach turned. I glanced at my father. Still nothing from him, just that blank, passive look he always wore when things got messy. Mom took a breath, then spoke. Each word carefully measured. "You've become increasingly controlling throughout this wedding. Anna, always inserting your opinions, always reminding us of your contributions." I stared at her, stunned. She held up a hand, silencing me. We understand you mean well, but your presence has caused more tension than joy. Course. For Rachel's sake, we think it's best if you step back. From everything. I couldn't speak. She continued, gently now, as if she were offering me a gift. You won't be part of the bridal party. In fact, we think it's best if you don't attend the wedding at all. My ears rang. I looked at Rachel again. Finally. She met my eyes. It's just gotten so stressful. She murmured, Mom thinks this is for the best. Mom thinks, not I think, not this is what I want. Just, Mom thinks. I turned to Megan. She was watching me like a spectator waiting for the next move in a game. I felt heat rise in my face, but I didn't let it crack me. I see, I said slowly, turning back to Rachel. And what do you think Rachel looked away? It was so quiet, I could hear the clock ticking above the fireplace. I asked you to be my maid of honor. I said, you asked me, screamed it, even, and now I'm not even invited. Rachel didn't reply. Mom took over again, as she always did. You're making this harder than it has to be. It's not personal. I almost laughed. Not personal. To be erased from my sister's wedding by my own family, and it's not personal. I looked at my father, desperately. One last time. He opened his mouth, closed it, said nothing, so I did the only thing I could do. I exhaled slowly and said, if I'm not chosen to stay, then I'll choose to leave. And I did. I walked out of that house without slamming the door, without crying, without giving them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I got in my car, sat in the dark driveway for what felt like hours, and drove home in silence. What hurt wasn't just the rejection. It was the choreography of it all. The way they'd rehearsed their lines, sat in position, waited for me to arrive like an unwanted guest at a show they'd already staged. They didn't just cut me out. They did it together, and somehow that hurt more than the cut itself. I didn't cry when I got home. I didn't scream or throw things or drown myself in a bottle of wine, though part of me wished I could. That kind of theatrical release would have made sense, maybe even felt satisfying. But instead, I just stood in the doorway of my apartment in the dark, keys still in hand, coat still on, and listened to the silence. It was the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it exposes. Every memory, every question, every what-if echoed louder inside it. Eventually, I moved. I turned on one light, made a cup of tea I didn't drink, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, a blank spreadsheet open in front of me. I started listing everything. Photographer deposit, $2,500. Welcome baskets for out-of-town guests, $840. Calligraphy for name cards, $300. Florist upgrade. Rachel's preference, not Mom's. $100 gift for bridal shower. Rachel never opened it in front of me, $250. Dress alteration refund for one bridesmaid covered discreetly, $180. Honeymoon package, $8, $600. I kept going. The numbers added up faster than I expected. A few hundred here, a few thousand there. I'd paid for things quietly, efficiently, without fanfare like always. The total stared back at me, $15,430. All of it for a wedding I'd been formally uninvited to. And not just uninvited, removed. Like I was a glitch in the program someone had finally debugged. Around 200 at me. I opened the email from the travel agency. The honeymoon itinerary still glowed like a dream. First-class flights, private oceanfront villa, sunset dinners, a handwritten note from me to Rachel and David, tucked into the welcome packet they'd never see. I hovered over the cancel trip button. My hands trembled, but not from sadness, from clarity. They didn't want me there, not at the wedding, not in the pictures, not in the story. So what was I doing underwriting it? Click. A confirmation window. Click. An automatic refund email pinged into my inbox. Next, the resort. I canceled the villa, the couple's massage, the guided waterfall hike Rachel once told me she dreamed of. Click. Click. Gone. Then I called my bank. Hi. Yes, I said. Voice steady. I need to lock my card ending in 0244. There may have been some unauthorized charges recently. It wasn't exactly a lie. I hadn't given my mother my card information, not directly. But she'd somehow used it for upgraded linens and those last-minute custom favors she insisted the wedding couldn't do without. I'd seen the pending transactions. I asked to dispute the charges, set up a new card, changed the delivery address. By 3:45 a.m., I had canceled every financial tie I had to the wedding. The apartment remained quiet around me. I hadn't turned on music or called anyone. I didn't want comfort. I didn't want pity. I just wanted clarity. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I had it. I stared at the screen again, at the refund confirmations, at the list of what I'd given. Not one line said Rachel asked. Not one entry said they expected it. All of it, every dollar had been my choice. That realization hit harder than any of Mom's cold silences or Rachel's shrinking presence. I had chosen to pour into people who never made space to hold me in return. I closed the laptop, drank the now cold tea, went to bed without brushing my teeth, and for the first time since the engagement announcement, I didn't replay how to make things right. I didn't draft apology texts I'd never send. I didn't wonder if maybe, just maybe, they were right about me being too much, because I wasn't too much. I was just finally enough for myself. The message came in at 6:42 a.m. while I was still lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long I could stay horizontal before life demanded movement. Rachel, why did you cancel the honeymoon? I don't understand. You said it was a gift. Did I do something wrong? Please, I need to talk. I read it 3 times, my heart both racing and sinking. She didn't know. A second message followed, this time from David. David, we need to talk. Please, it's urgent. I responded with one word, when he replied almost immediately. Today, noon. Café Mercado. She needs to see the truth. By the time I arrived, Rachel and David were already there. They were seated at a small round table in the back corner, away from the lunchtime buzz. David stood up when he saw me. Rachel didn't. She looked unraveled. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, eyes swollen, her phone resting face down beside a tissue crumpled in her hand. Her coffee sat untouched. Hey, I said quietly. She looked up, and the pain on her face was raw. No more defenses, no curated smiles, no loyalty to a version of the story that made sense. I thought you were punishing me, she said, her voice small, for choosing Mom over you, for not speaking up. You thought I'd cancel a honeymoon out of spite, I asked gently. I didn't want to believe it, she whispered. But you never answered my texts. David slid his phone across the table. That's the thing, he said. You never got them. Rachel picked up the phone and opened the Messages app. He tapped a thread labeled Anna and scrolled. I leaned in and froze. They weren't my messages. The tone was all wrong. The grammar wasn't mine. The spacing. Even the emojis, it was like reading a stranger pretending to be me. Sorry, can't make it to the bridal tasting. Work is insane. Hope Megan can fill in. Let Mom pick whatever cake she wants. I'm too busy to care. Can we not blow money on some weird honeymoon fantasy? Just go somewhere normal. I felt nauseated. Rachel's voice broke. I thought you didn't want to be involved, that you were annoyed, disinterested, that maybe... I didn't matter. Those aren't my words, I said quietly. David nodded. We figured it out last night. Your mother saved screen recordings of those fake messages on her tablet, probably to keep her story straight. Then we checked your phone. Rachel, she created a contact under Anna's name, but it was her number. She deleted every real message your sister sent. Rachel covered her mouth. She used your trust to isolate you. I said, trying to steady my voice. She made me look cold. And she made sure you'd never question it. Rachel started to cry soft, silent tears that shook her shoulders but didn't need sound to make their weight known. I should have known, she whispered. But she's our mom. I just believed. David put an arm around her. But she didn't lean in. Instead, she reached across the table toward me. I need to see it, she said. I opened my bag, pulled out a folder. I'd brought printouts, email confirmations, payment receipts, copies of real texts, screenshots of my canceled honeymoon itinerary. Rachel flipped through them with trembling hands. Each document another crack in the story she'd been sold. And when she reached the final page, a copy of the note I'd planned to include in their welcome basket in Bali, she broke. She put her head in her hands and sobbed. I didn't rush to comfort her, not out of cruelty, but because I knew this wasn't a moment to be fixed. It needed to be felt, fully. After a long silence, she finally looked up. I've been thinking like a child, she said. Letting Mom write the script, letting her cast us in roles we outgrew a long time ago. I exhaled slowly. You weren't the only one. I kept thinking that if I gave enough, sacrificed enough, maybe one day I'd earn a seat at the table without having to fight for it. She reached for my hand. You were always there, and I couldn't see it. I didn't always speak up. I admitted I let her fill in the blanks, too. That ends now. For the first time. We sat as equals. Not as the dreamer and the planner. Not as the artist and the analyst. Not even as the golden child and the ghost. Just two women. Finally talking not to prove anything. Not to repair what was broken beyond mending, but to rebuild something new from what was still true. The truth had been buried, but not erased. And now, it was finally out in the open. The living room in Aunt Catherine's house hadn't changed in 20 years. Same floral couch, same sepia-toned photographs on the mantel, same scent of lavender and lemon furniture polish. But that evening, the space felt tighter, more fragile, like the walls themselves were bracing for what was about to happen. Everyone was already there when I arrived. Rachel sat beside David, her fingers laced tightly through his. Megan scrolled on her phone in the corner, trying too hard to look uninterested. Aunt Catherine offered me a soft smile, the kind that said, I know this is hard, but I'm here. My father, Douglas, stood by the fireplace, one hand resting on the mantel like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to stay or bolt. He looked older than I remembered, tired in a way that wasn't just about age. Evelyn arrived last. She stepped into the room like a guest of honor, a tight smile pinned to her face, eyes scanning the group with practiced composure. Her gaze met mine briefly, unreadable. Then she turned to my aunt. "Thank you for hosting. I understand this is about the wedding budget." No one responded. Aunt Catherine cleared her throat. "Actually, Evelyn, we're here to talk about something else." Rachel shifted. David placed a manila folder on the coffee table and nodded at me. It was time. I took a slow breath, then stood. "I know this is uncomfortable," I began, voice calm but steady. "But some things need to be said out loud, things that have been happening for months." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of printed screenshots. Payment receipts, email chains, and text logs. These are copies of real messages I sent Rachel, ones she never received. Messages that were deleted, rerouted, or replaced by ones you fabricated from your own phone. Douglas looked up sharply. I laid out the evidence piece by piece, methodically, the contact swap, the altered texts, the screen recordings we'd recovered from her tablet, the fake thread that made me look cold, the real thread that was erased. Megan glanced at Evelyn, suddenly less smug. I turned to Rachel, who gave me a small nod of encouragement. "I did everything I could to be part of your wedding," I said, "not to control it, but to support you. Quietly, consistently. And Mom made sure you never saw any of that." Evelyn folded her arms. "This is absurd," David cut in. Calm but firm. "We verified everything. You created the fake threads. You posed as Anna. You deleted real communication. That's not interpretation. That's manipulation." Evelyn's mouth tightened. "I was trying to protect Rachel." From her own sister, Aunt Catherine asked softly. Silence. Then Douglas stepped forward. "I knew something was off," he said. His voice cracked. "I heard you talking about managing Anna once." "Evelyn." I told myself I'd misunderstood. I told myself it wasn't my place to interfere. He looked at me, eyes watery. I chose peace over protection. "And I'm sorry." "Anna, I should have stood up for you." My throat tightened, but I said nothing. His regret hung heavy in the air. More honest than anything I'd ever heard him say in my entire life. Evelyn's face flushed. "You're all turning this into some kind of witch hunt." I did what I thought was best. Anna has always been overbearing. She makes everything about her. I was just trying to keep things simple. Rachel stood. It was quiet, deliberate. "No," she said. "You were trying to keep things under your control. You erased my sister from my wedding. You made me believe she didn't care. You lied. Repeatedly." Evelyn opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I'm your mother. I was looking out for you." Rachel shook her head. "No, you were looking out for yourself." Evelyn's voice rose. "I sacrificed everything for you girls. I held this family together. I gave you a life, no." Rachel said again. Louder now. "Anna gave. She supported me when you didn't. She never asked for credit. And you tried to erase her." Everyone was silent. Then Rachel turned to face her fully. "Anna is my maid of honor." She said, "That's not negotiable. And if you can't respect her, you shouldn't be at the wedding." Evelyn's eyes widened. "You're choosing her over me. I'm choosing truth over manipulation," Rachel replied. "I'm choosing my sister, the one who actually showed up." Evelyn looked around the room, searching for someone to side with her. No one moved. Not even Megan. Finally. Evelyn let out a bitter laugh, then dropped into the armchair as if the weight of it all had finally reached her spine. "I see," she muttered. "So this is how it ends." "No," I said quietly. "This is how it begins. Because families don't break in one day. They fray in silence, in the cracks between what's said and what's meant, between loyalty and fear. But healing starts the moment we stop protecting the lie and start telling the truth." The agreement wasn't pretty. It wasn't even particularly warm. But it was clear. Evelyn could attend the wedding on the condition that she didn't plan, direct, or control any part of it. No vendor calls, no dress fittings, no last-minute venue changes, and above all, no comments about seating charts, color palettes, or how things used to be done. It wasn't an invitation to participate. It was permission to witness. To everyone's surprise. She accepted. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was the realization that her usual tactics no longer worked. Or maybe, deep down, she feared what it would mean if the family moved on without her. As for me, I agreed to step back into the role of maid of honor, but this time, with boundaries. I told Rachel, calmly and without apology, "I'll stand beside you. I'll support you. But I won't be coordinating, funding, or carrying this on my back. That's not the version of me you get anymore." Rachel didn't argue. She simply nodded, tears in her eyes. That's more than fair. We reworked what we could. Some plans were too far along to change. Others we adjusted to better reflect Rachel and David, not Mom. It was messy, awkward, sometimes even tense. But it was real. And on the day of the wedding, the sun came out in that quiet, generous way that doesn't draw attention to itself. The venue, a renovated barn surrounded by wildflowers, felt more like Rachel than anything we'd discussed months earlier. She chose soft lavender tones and hand-painted her own table numbers. David wore a gray suit and smiled so big I worried his face might cramp. I arrived early, wearing the sage green dress Rachel had picked weeks ago, not the first choice, not the color Mom would have chosen. But it felt right. In the bridal suite, as I helped fasten the delicate buttons down the back of Rachel's gown, our eyes met in the mirror. There was no ceremony in our exchange, no grand declarations, just mutual recognition. She didn't say thank you. She didn't have to. Because this wasn't a favor. This was two women reclaiming something they didn't realize they'd lost each other. I handed her the bouquet. She squeezed my hand, and that was enough. The ceremony itself was far from flawless. The flower girl refused to walk down the aisle. One of the groomsmen tripped on a step. Aunt Linda sneezed during the vows, but the laughter that followed wasn't the polished, performative kind. It was soft, honest, forgiving. Evelyn sat in the second row, just as agreed. Her face remained composed, but her hands clutched her clutch too tightly. Her posture just a little too stiff. She didn't speak to me. I didn't mind. Later, during the reception. I stood by the dessert table watching guests dance under a canopy of string lights. The DJ played some indie track Rachel loved. David twirled her with both hands. They laughed like the rest of the world had finally gone quiet. Rachel found me a little before the speeches. We sat on the low stone wall just outside the barn, away from the music, the people, the expectations. For the first time in years, there was no script between us. You know, she said softly. There was a long time when I thought I owed Mom everything, that without her, I wouldn't be where I am. And now I asked. Rachel looked at me, her voice firm but kind. Now I realize the person who really showed up, the one who made things possible even when I didn't notice, was you. I exhaled. Not from relief, but from release. I wasn't waiting for her to say that. I didn't need her to. But hearing it sincerely, without prompt, felt like closure that didn't require a full stop. I didn't do it perfectly. I said, "Neither did I," she replied. And we smiled, not as sisters trapped in old roles, but as two women who had earned their way back to each other. The night ended without drama. Evelyn left quietly. No tears, no toast, no performance. Rachel and David danced their final song. Guests waved sparklers. And for the first time in a long time, I felt whole, not because everything was healed, but because I had stopped bleeding. Rebuilding doesn't mean returning to what once was. It means choosing what comes next with eyes open, voice steady, and a heart that finally knows its worth. A month after the wedding, I sat in a folding chair in the basement of a community center, surrounded by women I didn't know, at least not yet. We were in a circle. The coffee was lukewarm. The lighting overhead buzzed faintly. Someone had brought store-brand cookies and a bowl of overripe clementines. It wasn't glamorous or groundbreaking, but it was safe. The group was called Women Who've Had Enough, a support circle for daughters, sisters, wives, and mothers who'd spent too long editing themselves down to fit someone else's comfort. When it was my turn to speak, I hesitated. My story wasn't the most extreme in the room. No bruises, no court orders. Just a lifetime of being quietly erased in small chunks, strategic ways. But when I started talking about Rachel, about Mom, about the wedding and the disinvitation that had split open everything, I realized I didn't need to justify it. I didn't need to minimize my pain. I said it plainly. I was replaced in my own sister's wedding because my presence made my mother uncomfortable. The room didn't flinch. No one looked away. One woman nodded so hard I thought her neck might give. Another reached over and squeezed my hand. That was the beginning. I started therapy the same week. Not because I was broken, but because I was tired of being so good at hiding what hurt. My therapist, Miriam, was patient and sharp in equal measure. She didn't coddle me. She challenged me gently, persistently, to ask better questions of myself. Why did I always give first? Why did I equate being needed with being loved? Why did I think silence was the same as strength? The answers didn't come all at once. But little by little, I started to see the pattern, not just with my mother, but in every version of myself that existed in other people's narratives. The daughter who kept the peace, the sister who picked up the pieces, the woman who never asked for anything in return. I wasn't angry about who I'd been. I was just ready to become someone else, someone whole. 2 weeks after the group meeting, I got a letter in the mail. A real letter, handwritten, on thick, off-white paper I recognized from the art store Rachel loved. There was no apology in it, no flowery explanation, just honesty. She wrote, "You didn't stop being my sister when I stopped acting like yours, but you also didn't let that define you. That's what I admire most. I'm not asking you to go back to who we were. I'd rather get to know who we're becoming. I sat with the letter for a long time, folded, unfolded, reread it. It didn't fix everything, but it didn't need to, because it wasn't about resolution. It was about respect. She wasn't asking for forgiveness. She was offering recognition, not as her older sister, not as her safety net, but as a woman standing beside her, not behind. I still go to the group, not every week, but enough to keep me grounded. I still see Miriam, too. We talk less about my mother now, and more about what comes next. I've started painting again, not for a gallery, just for me. The canvases line my apartment wall, messy and imperfect and mine. And when I think about that night, sitting on the couch in my parents' living room, hearing my mother say, "We've all agreed you're not welcome," I don't flinch anymore. Because she wasn't right. She was just wrong loud enough for everyone to believe her for a while. But not forever. Rachel and I text now. Not every day. But when it matters, she sends photos of her dog. I send her quotes from books she never finishes. We're still figuring it out. But for the first time, we're doing it as equals. The truth is, I didn't need the wedding to prove my worth. I didn't need an apology to feel whole. I didn't need an invitation to take up space. And neither do you. If you've ever been shut out by the very people you tried to hold together, just know you're not alone. Have you ever had to walk away from your own family just to protect your peace? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And if this one touched something in you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you won't miss the next story. Because sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your head held high.